In 1984, a pharmaceutical giant discovered that one of its most important medicines was silently putting patients' lives at risk. Bayer's factor VIII, used to treat hemophilia, was contaminated with HIV. In the United States and Europe, it was withdrawn, but the same product was then sold in Latin America and Asia. This is how that decision was made, and what it cost. Factor VIII was a breakthrough for people whose blood would not clot on its own, but it was produced from pooled plasma, thousands of donors combined in each batch. By 1982, doctors began to see a new, devastating immune disorder in some of these patients. Bayer knew the risk and developed a heat treatment to inactivate the virus. By 1984, a safer, heat-treated version was available. But there was still a problem. This is the dark history of the Bayer blood scandal. Millions of dollars worth of older, untreated stock sat in company warehouses. Executives faced a choice: destroy the contaminated inventory or sell it elsewhere. Internal documents show the remaining product was sent overseas from the United States. The crates were stamped for export, not destruction. One shipment after another left the docks, bound for clinics around the world.
Patients and parents were never told that the older version carried a higher risk of HIV infection.
Inside the company, financial losses weighed more heavily than the lives depending on that medicine. For those who received those injections, the consequences would last a lifetime.
In Argentina and Brazil, thousands with hemophilia were infected. In Argentina alone, hundreds contracted HIV from these blood products.
Patients trusted a life-saving treatment and were failed by the system.
For many families, the full truth emerged only decades later.
Some of those families decided they would not stay silent.
They went to court, demanding that someone be held accountable.
Many cases ended in confidential settlements with strict non-disclosure agreements. Medical records, shipment logs, and internal memos pointed one direction. Bayer responded with teams of lawyers and years of resistance. Some families got compensation, but money couldn't restore those changed lives.
The virus weakened immune systems, leaving them vulnerable to other infections.
Hospital wards filled with patients whose only mistake was trusting treatment. Legal cases moved slowly. The disease progressed faster than courts. Lawyers built cases from medical charts, testimony, and internal documents. Each file was a real person. Life before, different life after.
Behind closed doors, negotiations decided how much each case was worth. Some victims testified from wheelchairs or hospital beds, too weak to stand.
Their stories forced the world to examine the global blood trade.
As the scandal went public, protests erupted outside company offices.
Internal risk models weighed potential lawsuits against projected product revenue.
For many families, any victory came years after diagnosis or death.
Eventually, stricter screening ended this chapter of contaminated blood products.
But destroyed vials and closed facilities couldn't undo the damage. Legal letters and agreements tried limiting how much reached the public.
Families and survivors rebuilt their lives around what they'd lost. Witnesses described not just illness, but years of fear and stigma. Across the aisle, corporate lawyers defended decisions made far from patients. And outside, life moved on. Inside hospitals and homes, impact remained. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical industry kept growing, managing risk and reputation.
In some courtrooms, judges finally acknowledged the scale of harm.
Public pressure turned private tragedies into global demands for safer products. Courts found companies liable for selling products they knew carried risk.
Old factories fell silent as new standards made old practices unacceptable. Today, strict screening of blood products is mandatory in most countries.
Survivors and families continue to honor those who were lost.
Their experience still shapes how we regulate blood products and safety.
Contaminated Factor 8 warns what happens when oversight completely fails. Contaminated. New health crises still test whether profit or patients come first. Each case leaves marks on families, communities, and protective systems. Those who suffered helped force changes that protect millions today. But the temptation to cut corners or shift risk hasn't disappeared. Documents from the 1980s still speak clearly about those decisions.
Courts in several countries ultimately recognized the company's responsibility. No senior executive went to prison. Penalties paid, lives not restored.
It remains a lesson when human beings become numbers in calculations. Similar patterns, shifting risk to weaker markets, appeared in later scandals.
Knowing this history helps recognize those patterns when they reappear.
This is contaminated cure history, people who force truth into light. The facts remain, whether companies are comfortable with them or not. The least we can do is remember what happened, who paid. The contaminated cure, a warning written in blood tests, not myths. Want more investigations into corporate history? Subscribe and stay informed. As long as this story is remembered, it's harder to repeat.
As long as this story is remembered, it's harder to repeat.